Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. That, of course, is James 1:27. I'm your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, where it is always my honor to encourage and equip you for your parenting journey. I'm an adoptive mom. I've got 8 kids, 3 bios, 1 kinship, and 4 through international adoption. They range in age from 36 down to 19 and a half. So I've been on this parenting journey for quite some time, for more than 26 years as an adoptive parent. And all of my kids that we've adopted have experienced various levels of trauma. 2 are diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. They have fetal alcohol syndrome specifically. And 2 that were most likely exposed. But back in those early days, we didn't really have any idea what we were dealing with. But my hope is that you will find this podcast to be an invaluable resource for your parenting journey. I'm here with you. I'm here for you. And I hope that you will follow not only this podcast, but our new social media pages for the adoption and foster care journey. Specifically on Instagram, we are at AFC_journey. And on Facebook, it is the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. So like them, follow them, connect with me there. And speaking of connecting, I would love to meet you in person. And I just got to meet one of our support group members from California. She and her husband happened to be in my neck of the woods in upstate New York. So we got to get together and meet in person. We've been connecting through our support group for over a year, maybe 2 years at this point, every month, a few times a month. So it was just wonderful to meet in person and spend an afternoon together. But I would love to connect with you if you are going to be at CAFO, the Christian Alliance for Orphans Summit, this October 1st through 3rd in Houston, Texas. I will be there. I am doing a breakout session workshop on FASD, and we're also doing a meetup. So we have a room where all of us who have kiddos with FASD diagnosed or just expected, we're going to have a meetup there. So we get to spend some time and meet each other and encourage one another. And I will also be speaking at the Replanted conference in Chicago. And the dates for that, I didn't have them for the last episode, but the dates for Replanted are October 23rd through 25th. So I will be teaching a breakout session there as well. And I will have exhibitor booths at both CAFO and Replanted, where you can stop by, speak with me there, hang out at my booth, grab some resources and whatnot. So I hope you'll consider those 2 conferences for adoptive and foster parents are just incredible. I have been going to CAFO for, oh my goodness gracious, it may be 13 years or more. And my very first CAFO, I came home and just was so impacted that it led to establishing our nonprofit, Justice for Orphans, which led to everything we're doing today, including this podcast and the FASD resources that we offer and all of that. So it's just a huge encouragement and boost and so much training and connection at CAFO. And then last year was the first time I was ever at Replanted, which is really like a weekend retreat for foster and adoptive parents. So you get your cup filled. You get some training and hear from some amazing speakers, but you also get your cup filled with just being together as a couple, being with other foster and adoptive parents. And it's just so great and highly recommended. So I hope that you will take that into consideration. Get into one of those conferences. And if you're there, look me up, find me. Would love to connect with you. So on to today's show. Today we have another adoptive mom guest with us. Angela Miller is founder and chairman of Laura's Village, a nonprofit inspired by her daughter, Laura. Angela is a school teacher and has worked with nonprofits to care for critically ill orphans overseas. She's also provided respite for at-risk children in the U.S. foster care. And she has written the book Nosey Rosey to highlight her driving passions of faith, family, adoption, and special needs. We're going to talk about her book today and her story. Angie is a bio and adoptive mom to 5 grown children. And in addition, Angela is active in the special needs community as her oldest daughter, Laura, has severe intellectual and developmental disabilities. Angie says, I believe that God has created every person for a purpose. No matter what level of ability exists, everyone is able to make a positive impact on the community. And I say amen to that. So please welcome Angela Miller. Hey, Angie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on. I'm so excited to get to know you and for our listeners to get to know you. And I'm curious because I know you're a school teacher. I read that in your bio, and you've taught overseas and you've worked with critically ill orphans. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's been really an adventure. It has because of my husband's job. He works in international logistics. He has forever. That allowed us to be placed overseas on expat assignments. So we spent about 2.5 years in Brussels, Belgium, came back, had our first child, and a few years later, we went back to Stuttgart, Germany for another 2.5 years. So in both of those places, I was able to teach at the International School of Brussels. I taught first grade there, which was a great experience. It was my first real experience teaching children whose first language was not English. So, a third up to a half of the class would be non-native English speakers. And some of the kids would come in with no English whatsoever. So it was my first teaching position, and it was an adventure for sure, but just, it was amazing. And then in Stuttgart, kind of the same thing, more English speakers there. But it was, it gave us a really great cultural appreciation living overseas. I love that we live here in America, love our country, so respectful of our first responders and military and everything. But living overseas, you really get an appreciation of other cultures and the architecture and the cuisine and the people and the languages. But boy, it's always good to come home too. So that the teaching experience was great. And then once we moved back, it would have been 2012, I think it was. My husband was headed over on another business trip over to China. And we said, hey, why don't we see if there's an orphanage over there that could use some medical supplies, baby items, so he could take a suitcase over with him. So we found an organization called the Bao Bei Foundation. And we got a hold of them, and they're like, oh, have you adopted from over here? And we're like, well, not through Bao Bei, but we'd love to, bring a suitcase of materials. So we collected some and he took it over. And that just started our whole adventure with the Bao Bei Foundation. And I kind of took over as their US financial manager for almost 10 years. A lot of the people over on the Chinese side did not really know my husband by name. He was just known as the suitcase man, because every time he would go over for business, he would take a suitcase of medical supplies or orthotics or whatever they requested. He would take that over. So we actually provided surgeries, or Bao Bei provided surgeries for critically ill orphans. So heart surgeries, a lot of children would come in from the orphanages with hydrocephalus. And so they would go into the hospitals, have their surgery, and then they would go into expat family homes in the Shanghai area. And they would almost act as a foster home for these babies. Not many at the time would go back to the orphanage. Quite often, either those families fell in love and ended up adopting them, or families from outside of China would internationally adopt them out. And interestingly enough, right before COVID, we had been matched with one of those babies that would have been our 5th adoption. But at that point, everything shut down and he's now stuck. So
sorry to hear that.
yeah.
That has affected so many families.
Yes,
Heartbreaking.
yes. I remember being on a call with one of the US departments in the government, and there were hundreds of families saying, we know it's 2021. Can we go in and just, stay in the hotel? We'll quarantine in the hotel, bring the kids with us. We'll stay longer if we need to, but there was just really no movement there.
So heartbreaking for the orphans, right? Who
Absolutely
so close to having a forever
Oh,
family.
we were within a couple of months of travel. It was hard.
Yeah, yeah. We could do a whole episode on that, right?
Oh,
Maybe
yes, we
felt,
could.
yeah, yeah.
We could.
But yeah, go ahead.
Nope. But yeah, so we've really been blessed to be able to be in contact with people around the world. And yeah, it's been an adventure. It truly has.
Yeah. So prior to that, though, you hadn't adopted yet, had you?
Laura was our first adoption, and she was adopted in 2005. So she was actually adopted while we were living in Germany.
Okay.
And God opened the doors unbelievably for us. We had one biological son. He was 3 at the time. I had battled with some infertility, and then we moved over to Germany. And at that point, we said, okay, let's look for let's adopt. And God placed these families in our midst in this international community who had adopted internationally. He provided us with a U.S. social worker living just about an hour or 2 from us, whose wife was working for the government. He just happened to be there, so he could act as our social worker. So anyway, while living in Germany, it all worked out so that we were able to travel from Germany to China to adopt Laura, back to the U.S. to get her passport, and then return to our home at the time back in Germany. So it totally was an around the world trip.
Wow, I guess. I'm thinking just the paperwork, because I know how hard it is to, all of the paperwork for an international adoption. And that's just, I remember doing that, and I've never lived any place but the United States, but I'm sure it was a little bit more complicated for you.
There were a couple other forms, and trying to get the forms from the German officials and then get them translated. So there was a lot of that involved too, but it worked out.
Yeah. Had you guys always wanted to adopt, or it just after having the one child and some infertility there, that was the next step?
Jamie and my husband Jamie and I had always had adoption in the back of our mind. But it really didn't come to fruition until this point. And I would love to be able to tell this beautiful story about how God just moved our hearts with compassion for the orphan. But speaking for myself, my heart was not there at the time. I had this beautiful 3-year-old son. He was very precocious, and I actually was dealing with a lot of pride at the time. I was a great mom. I wanted to have more kids, so we weren't living in the US. US adoption was not an option, so let's head over to China, and naively thinking that there are all these healthy little girls available in China because of their one-child policy, and that's how we're going to grow our family. So I had a lot of pride, and I had a lot of selfishness at that point. It's not something that I'm certainly proud of now, but God did a massive work in our heart through this whole process. But I do know that God was in charge of this, and he was leading our family to adopting, and Laura specifically. We were obviously both on board with the adoption and the process, going over to China. And I really actually can go back to when I was a little girl. And I know that that's when God put that seed in my heart for adoption. It was the time when, to get the newspapers delivered to your front door. And I remember having it spread out in front of me on the carpet. My parents had this red carpet, the gold sofa, and the red fringe hanging off the curtains. It was that style back then, but I can picture it. And the newspaper spread out in front of me. And I remember seeing a picture of this little baby girl, and she was just as bald as can be. And a local family had just returned from Romania and had adopted her. And the article talked about the process they went through. And I know that that's when the seed was planted. It took a long time for it to come to fruition, but it was planted.
Yeah, that's precious. And I want to get to asking you more about Laura, obviously, but so then you had three other kiddos that you adopted, correct?
Correct.
So
Yes.
tell us a
Yes.
little bit about, because they came from different countries. So kind of
Yes.
give us a little bit of that story.
Sure, sure. I'm sure we'll get into talking a little bit about Laura later, but even though she was adopted through the Healthy Child program in China, she does have quite severe intellectual and developmental disabilities. So that was quite a shock. So we kind of pulled back from China for the moment, and then started. Gosh, she wasn't even home a year, and we decided to adopt again and found our son on my birthday, actually. And he is from Taiwan. So he came home really fast. He was home in about 6 months. That was a very fast adoption. We were only 1 week in country. That was Charlie. He was home for a few years. We went back to Thailand and adopted another son. He was 7 years old when we adopted him from Thailand. And within a few months of him being home, we found our daughter, who was our youngest, and we traveled back to China, and she came home in 2011. So it was pretty quick in the process of bringing these children home, but yeah, they're now between the ages of 25 and 18, and I think we blinked one too many times. They grow up so fast.
You do grow up so fast.
They
So
do.
about because it sounds like I was going to ask you this about Laura. So you didn't expect her, like you didn't adopt her knowing that she had developmental disabilities because she was on the Healthy Child program.
Correct. We did not, and again, I I didn't choose to adopt a child with special needs. We specifically went to China because they were known for their program and for their little girls over there who simply needed a family. And in my naive brain, it was like they just need a family, and we'll just bring them home or bring a little girl home. So she did come through the Healthy Child program. Her files all looked like she was typically developing, but it didn't take us long really to realize that there were some pretty significant issues. So we went back to Germany, to our home there for a few more months, and then I decided to come back to the States and start figuring out what was going on. And I knew it was going to be a whole lot easier back here in the States than trying to navigate the German language and the medical system there. So we came home and just started working through. But that's really when God started kind of breaking my heart apart and showing me the pride and the selfishness that I had, and opening our eyes really to a world not only of the millions of orphans around the world, but so many of them who do have special needs. And that's how the rest of our children came home. They all came home under the umbrella of special needs. Nothing near what Laura has, but special needs of some kind.
Yeah. So then what other types of special needs have you been navigating with the other kids?
Um, the boys, when they came home, theirs were our oldest. We adopted him when he was 7. He was our oldest adoption, and he was on the special needs list because of his age.
Okay.
Another child had been in the hospital with something very minor, but placed him on the special needs list. And then our youngest daughter has ectrodactyly of hands and feet, which means that she just doesn't have all of her digits.
Mhm.
But so yeah.
Yeah. So then tell us a little bit more about Laura. She came home at what age again?
We adopted her at 11 months of age. So, really up to that point, I can't say that there was any deception involved, nothing of the sort, because they're so young, they're so little. She was only 15 pounds. She was so, so tiny. Um, but it really was, even when we were in China, she wasn't doing quite the same. She was on the same level as some of the other babies. And looking back now, I remember one of the nannies saying she was the only one that didn't cry on the bus when we were making the drive over here. And at the time I was like, oh, that's great. No, it wasn't. She should have been feeling those emotions. Um, but she came home at 11 months, and before her second birthday, we were back stateside looking into what kind of services we could get. She also came to us with very high lead levels, not high enough where they wanted to do any chelation, but high enough where you knew that that it had an effect.
Yeah, sure. Certainly. So, tell us a little bit more. She's how old now, and just kind of, describe her for us so we can
Oh,
get some.
she is pure joy,
Yeah.
absolute joy. She is the most content young lady. She's going to be 21 next month. And she's very, very petite. I'm so excited I can still shop in the little girl section for her. She is nonverbal. She does not use any kind of tools for communication. So, I mean, she's been with us for 20 years. We know what she needs and how she communicates with her smiles, or um, with maybe reaching out for something or turning away from something. So it's her gestures that really tell us what she needs and what she wants. But she loves everyone. She loves giving her high fives.
Mm.
And she's been an absolute blessing. She loves to be in the water. So whether we're swimming, I actually got her off the bus one time coming home from school, and she saw a puddle in the road and just sat. She was just going to play right there in the water. So I'm like, no, we'll keep moving home. But she loves the water. She loves her food. She loves people. She truly is a joy.
Mm.
But a couple of years ago, I was out on a walk, and that's kind of when I have my quiet time with God, and I'm praying. And we had just moved here to North Carolina, and it really hit me that she was going to be out of high school in a couple of years. I had
Mhm.
just gone back to teaching because we had homeschooled for, gosh, almost 18 years, I think. Just went back to teaching, and I thought, in a couple of years, she's going to be out of school. Now what? What is this going to look like? What am I going to do with Laura? And so I started praying about it and asking God over and over, what am I going to do with Laura? And I remember just hearing in my heart, it's not what are you going to do with Laura? It's what are you going to do with Laura?
Mm.
And once I could wrap my mind around that whole shift of perspective, the ideas just started flooding in about, what do I want her life to look like? Where do I want her to be able to go? And what do I want her to be able to do during the day? And, dealing with the menopausal brain fog that we get, I would rush home, write everything down, sketch it out before I forgot. And Laura's Village just started coming together from that conversation with God. So she really, I kind of go back to the book of Esther, where he used this little girl who had become an orphan and raised her up to save her people. And I'm not equating Laura with saving her people, but God took her out of a situation, placed her in our families, and he's doing great things through her sweet little personality, and her disabilities have really become an avenue for us to reach out to other people and start a movement to really help those in our community who are caring for people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. Because after high school, the options, especially for those who need more hand over hand assistance with everything, are very, very minimal.
Yeah. Yeah, that varies by state even, right?
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
So, and so I definitely want to unpack Laura's Village, but since you're in North Carolina, does
Yes.
Laura's Village, you focus on individuals and families in North Carolina, or does it go beyond that?
Well, thankfully now with the internet and social media, we can reach people, literally around the world. So our website is starting to be this hub of kind of centralized information where you can watch videos of the support meetings that we've had. And maybe our specific state Medicaid suggestions don't apply to you in your state, but it should give you enough information to be able to go to your providers or your therapists, or to your Medicaid officials in your area, and start asking questions about what services can you get. So we're able to reach people at that level. Obviously, locally, we're providing support meetings for people and things more for the locals here, but we want to be able to reach people further out than that to help support them as well.
Yeah, I love that. So describe the mission of Laura's Village and the programs and services that you offer.
Absolutely. So we empower adults with special needs by nurturing their unique abilities, fostering independence, ensuring dignity, and building community. That's our actual mission statement. So our goal really is to come alongside these families and these individuals so that they can continue to live after high school a purposeful and meaningful life. So many families that I've talked to that are in this situation of post-graduation, their adults are kind of trying to just figure out what to do, or they're sitting at home and they're watching TV, or they're, maybe we'll go bowling today, or maybe we'll go swimming tomorrow. And those are great activities, but we're talking about the rest of your life. And I believe God has designed each one of us, no matter what our level of ability is, to do something to be a blessing to the community around us. So, for example, last Saturday, Laura's Village had a cut-a-thon, and we chose a cut-a-thon because one thing that Laura is able to do all by herself is grow this gorgeous hair. And she just donated for the 5th time to an organization that provides wigs for children fighting cancer, alopecia, those kinds of things. So we wanted to celebrate the ability that she has. And we want to be able to do that for all of the individuals and give them those opportunities to make a meaningful impact in the world, and to have purpose, and to feel that purpose, and know that they're important and they have something to offer the world.
I love that. And then it's like we were talking prior to hitting the record button, and my youngest adopted son is almost 20, and he too has an intellectual disability. He's got fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and he just finished high school. And has a part-time job with lots of supports. It's only 2 nights a week. He'll always need some type of that one-on-one,
Sure.
Services, supports. And I'm sure many of our listeners can relate.
Mm-hmm.
So Angie, what would you say for, what should parents and caregivers be doing to plan for our kids' future? Again, I know it's a little different by state, the different things that are available. And even may vary by the disability, but for parents to, to be like, oh my gosh, I need to do something. Where do I even begin?
Right. I would say, we need to begin when our kids are young. And I know for some of that, where our kids aren't young, but for those parents who do have young children, whether they were diagnosed at birth or they're 3 or they're 7, one of the very first things they need to do is to look into what kind of waivers Medicaid provides within their state. For example, in the state of North Carolina, we have something called the Innovations Waiver. And what that does is provide Medicaid services to these individuals, respite hours, community living service hours. So they have caregivers that are able to come in. There's a whole gamut of things that are offered, but there's a 10-year wait list. So putting your child on that list, finding out if your state has one, is crucial, because now you're ready for when they hit that 21, 22-year-old age and they're aging out of the public school system. 22 is the age in North Carolina. They're farther down that wait list. So you want to be sure that to do that. I would also suggest for people to make sure they're meeting with a financial planner, to make sure that they're setting up a special needs trust if that's appropriate, that they're appointing guardians. Again, when our kids are young, we're not thinking about those things because in our mind, we're going to be there to take care of them. But as we get older, we're realizing we're not, and we need to have a plan in place. And the earlier they can do that, the better. Something else I would do is be sure you're advocating at all stages for your child. I did struggle for quite a while speaking up because I tend to be more of a people pleaser, and that's kind of just how I grew up. And I didn't want to offend anybody. I didn't want to put anybody out, if I can put it that way. And that was not the best approach always. So making sure that we advocate for our kids is crucial. And then making sure at all times we have some kind of community to support us. It's a lot easier when our kids are little because they're still cute and they're small and they're easy to play with, easier and to take care of. But as I found that as Laura got older, the friends that we had that were her age are now moving forward. Their kids are in college, they're in the military, and you feel almost left behind. And it's kind of a lonely place to be. So making sure that you're keeping some kind of community around you, whether it's family, it's your friends, it's your church, finding those support groups so you have a shoulder to cry on, someone to vent to, someone to bounce ideas off, or somebody to say, fantastic, and celebrate with you when there's a milestone met.
Yeah, that's all excellent advice. And I know that you mentioned the Medicaid waiver, and that does vary by state. I know in New York State, where I am, it's the Office for Persons with Developmental Disabilities. And it took a lot of paperwork and a long drawn out process and all of that. But my son did qualify while he was still in school for a certain level of supports and services. And then, but that incrementally increased once he graduated and he's now done with school. There's a lot
Okay.
more to him. But it's a huge process to navigate through. But that's definitely something that every parent and caregiver should look at in their state, what is available. And sometimes, and so it wasn't for us, it wasn't a 10-year wait list, but it was over a year of paperwork and meetings and all of these things, and then you had to wait for approval, and there's back and
Yes.
forth, all of that. So
Yes.
it can be a very daunting um, process for sure.
It can. And finding someone who has gone through the process already and maybe recently can be a huge help. It really can. When we were applying for Laura to get her SSI, for Social Security, which is federal, it took us a year and a half because they kept sending the same paperwork over and over and over again. And it wasn't until we actually reached out to a US congressman in our state that it happened. So
Yeah.
keep fighting, keep pushing, keep advocating for your child, and find that support that can walk you through it.
Yeah, that's so wise. And the other thing that we did, knowing that our son would always need to have support, we
Mhm.
actually got guardianship of him.
Yes.
So that way, once he turned 18, we are his legal guardians. But it's very wise, like you said, to even look beyond that. Who could be guardian, who could become the guardian when we're no longer in the picture? Because that
Absolutely.
really do have to take into consideration. Hard to
Absolutely.
think about, but so necessary.
It is. And, we have kind of talked about taking our parents down this path this year at our support meeting. So in January, we started with, what does pre-transition look like when you're getting ready? Like maybe they're entering high school. What should you be doing to prepare them to leave high school? And at the end of the year, we're looking more at, what is retirement going to look like? What about the death of a caregiver? What about the death of your child? And those are tough topics, but they need to be discussed. And so we'll have, professionals come in from a couple different areas and just talk to parents about that and answer some of those tough questions.
Yeah. So such great information and support for families. And
Yeah,
you have a website for Laura's Village.
we do. It's laurasvillage.org. And we also have our social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and um, our board member who handles all of our social media for us does a phenomenal job of just keeping people up to date on kind of either the events going on or trends or just encouragement. So check those out because she does just a super job of keeping people informed.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
Also, we will put a link in the show notes to your website for Laura's Village and the social so that our listeners can look you up and find you
Great,
easy.
thank you.
Yeah. So I also want to ask you about the children's book that you
Yes.
called Nosey Rosey. I love the name. So tell us about what inspired you to write the book. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Writing a book has been on my bucket list for a while. So the idea came up a few years ago when I was actually working in our church nursery, and this sweet mom brought in her baby girl and said, she handed her over and she said, please help her take a nap. I need her to take a nap. I'm like, oh, I can do this. So I snuggled up with her in the rocking chair, and she would just about be ready to drift off to sleep, and something would happen in the church nursery, and she'd poke her little head up, and we did that for the whole service. And she came back, and I handed little Ryan back, and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't do it. She did not nap. Have a great afternoon. But
Yeah.
that's kind of what started me thinking about the whole Nosey Rosey. And when I went home and I started kind of putting the story together, I wanted to incorporate things that were important to me. So I was able to incorporate my faith, my family, adoption, and special needs. So adoption is really incorporated because the little girl in the story is kind of based on my daughter, Jenna. And she's our youngest, who she was adopted from China. She's now 18, just graduated high school. But it's when she was just this little girl, and her little pink blankie she used to carry around, and her little pigtails that she had on the top of her head. But I used her as the little girl in the story, but I also incorporated her actrodactyly, not because I wanted the story to be about special needs, but I wanted to have it kind of a gentle nod toward it. And for those who may not know, actrodactyly is she has it of hands and feet, and it simply means that she doesn't have all of her digits, or they're shaped differently. So that was kind of the nod towards special needs in the book. And there are wonderful picture books out there that talk about special needs and what it is. I simply wanted it to be part of the story. So that's what we did. And because she's from China, I was able to incorporate that diversity in there as well in terms of our adoption. But I also included our family. My husband's in the book as the dad, and in the book he's called Baba, because that's what Jenna called him when she first came home. She was 4 years old, and so she had her Chinese language that she was using, and that's what she called Jamie. But as I was writing it, I'm like, the whole story is about little Rosie going and finding comfort during a storm in the arms of her daddy, or Baba. But if you change those letters around, it becomes Abba. And it took me back to our Heavenly Father, so that when we are going through storms of life, we can go to our Heavenly Father. So a little bit of faith was incorporated in there, and simply my love of thunderstorms. I love thunderstorms. I find them relaxing. And I actually learned not too long ago that thunderstorms, actually, that low frequency in the thunder can affect your parasympathetic nervous system and bring a sense of calmness. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's why I love them so much, because I do find them so calming. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah,
And it's an adorable book, for
thank
sure.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So where can our listeners find a copy of Nosey Rosey?
It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble website, Target's website. Yeah.
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 We'll include a link for sure, so our listeners can find Nosey Rosey. It's a lovely, lovely children's book. What age group, age range would be the targeted age?
I would say up to about age 8.
Okay, great.
Yes, there's a lot of kind of repeated lines in there for the children to join into, and it's just a very sweet bedtime story. And the illustrator did just such a wonderful job of incorporating what we needed into that story.
Love it. Love it. Love to chat with fellow authors as well. So thank you for sharing about that. So believe it or not, and I know you and I could just talk forever, but as we wrap up, like you and I, our audience primarily adoptive and foster parents.
Yes.
Many of us also caring for kids with disabilities. So the journey is hard. There's grief and exhaustion, all part of it. There's joy as part of it. But Angie, would you offer us some words of encouragement as we close?
Absolutely. And I'd like to kind of go over to scripture, in Isaiah 40:11 is one that I look at quite often. And Isaiah 40:11 says, like a shepherd, he will tend his flock. In his arms, he will gather the lambs and carry them in his bosom. He will gently lead the nursing ewes. And when I did a little kind of study on that verse, the lambs are the children in our lives. And it might be that you're a parent of young children, or maybe you're the parent or caregiver of a teen or adult who developmentally is more like a child. And the nursing ewes that they're referring to are the caregivers. So to me, it just offers so much peace and hope and comfort in the truth that God has us. He's holding our kids close. He's leading us along the way. And, he's never promised us easy. And honestly, through the journeys that we've had with special needs and with adoption and just with parenting in general, it's usually through those bumps along the journey that we grow closer to him, that we're learning, that we're able to use what we see as these challenges to really move forward with a movement to help other people as well. So just knowing that there is always hope, and he's got this, and he loves our kids more than we ever could, which is a little mind-boggling. But he has them, he has us, and he has a plan.
I love that so much. Such comforting words for sure. Angie, thank you so much for all that you're doing on behalf of the special needs community, the adoption community. Just so grateful for all that you're doing. And thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Well, and thank you for allowing me to share that today. Thanks for what you're doing as well.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to the adoption and foster care journey today. I hope you were inspired and encouraged by my conversation with Angie Miller. Be sure to scroll down to the show notes where you can find the link to Laura's Village, as well as to her lovely children's book, Nosey Rosey, such a joy. And in addition, of course, to encouraging and equipping you for your parenting journey, we want to provide great training and resources as well. You heard about the support group that we have for parents and caregivers of kiddos with either diagnosed or just suspected FASD, the Hope for the FASD Journey support community. You can check that out on our website. I also offer one-on-one parent coaching. So if you're caring for a kiddo with FASD, again, diagnosed or not, I can, hold your hand and walk you through some things for however many sessions you would like to do that for, once a month, twice a month, however you want to do that, just to kind of personalize it, take a look at the specific primary characteristics that your kiddo struggles with, and how we can take a brain-based approach to providing supports and accommodations and just helping you on your parenting journey. And of course, the online and in-person workshops that I offer, there's always a free intro to FASD. It's a 1-hour online workshop. It's live. It's not a recording. So you get me live, and it's 1 hour, and you can learn about the impacts of prenatal exposure to alcohol, the symptoms, and how to take that brain-based approach to parenting. And get some tools to help you parent your kiddo. And I also every month offer a 3-hour session. It's more of a deep dive. The free intro is not a prerequisite. You can take one or the other, but if you want a little bit more than just the 1 hour, we do spend 3 hours kind of going deep in all of the things, and I use the facets neurobehavioral approach. So for parents, caregivers, anybody working with our kids, grandparents, adult siblings, youth group leaders, school teacher, anybody would benefit from those online workshops. And of course, I do travel and speak and have several conferences that I'll be speaking at, and visiting support groups throughout the country as well in the fall. So reach out to me if you're looking for some training, or for me to come and speak to encourage and equip your parents. And you can reach out to me and learn more. My email address, you can reach me directly, is in the show notes as well. And for all of the training, the workshops, the support group, and the coaching, right now you would go to our website, justicefororphans.ny.org. That is the parent organization over where all of the adoption and foster care journey stuff lives. We are going through a website renovation update, so it'll make more sense moving forward. But if you just search any of the things that you're hearing me talk about, you'll get to us for sure, and you'll find that. And the links, of course, if you want to get right there, are in the show notes. I also have a monthly blog post that I do on my sandraflach.com blog, which is connected to all of the website stuff that I've been describing. So that lots of resources that you can pick up on. Be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parents and caregivers so that they can get encouraged and equipped as well. You can watch this podcast if you want to watch the video version of it. We do post each one on YouTube, on the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel. So that is there. Of course, find us on Facebook and Instagram. Looking to connect with you in all of these places. And again, I'm so grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I am thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. And check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.